Hi, Nancy here. It's poinsettia season, and I thought it would be fun to paint one. This is the reference photo. It's a multicolored novelty variety. It's mostly red, a little pink, and a little white in it. I have a bit of history with poinsettias. I grew a poinsettia crop every year for 21 years. A good chunk of my life every year from September to December was focused on the growing and marketing of this crop. As with many agricultural crops, there are a lot of risks and a lot of challenges. I came close, but I never had a crop failure. And this is an old picture here. I was about 6 years into it. It was taken in 1995. And this picture was taken sometime in the early 2000s. The palette for the poinsettia painting is American Journey Red Hot Momma and Sap Green, Daniel Smith Lemon Yellow, and Quinacridone Red, and Holbein Indigo. Okay, this is going to be our sample painting. This is what we're aiming for. And since most of these bracts, which are the modified leaves that turn red, they are all pretty much done the same. So what I've done is just taken a small section of the lower left of the painting, and I'm going to work through that and show you how to do that, and then the rest of it should be the same. So I've inked a little section here so it will be easier to see. I'm going to start with the leaves first, let them dry. I think I'll wet those first, and I usually have a way of doing this where I do 1/2 of the leaf at a time. I went ahead and wet the whole thing. That's all right. It's a small section, so it's not a big deal. And I'm mixing some sap green with the indigo, which is an interesting color to use. Sometimes I forget about it. I really like it. I've been using so much Payne's Gray, and I decided to go ahead and use indigo for this, and I really liked it. I almost forgotten that I had it in my palette. Remember, this is going to dry lighter. We're just going to let that dry. This is going to be a pretty easy painting, I think. Let's try one section without wetting it. You can see the difference. It's no big difference. It just gives you a little more time to get the paint spread before it starts to dry on you. Makes it a little more of an even wash. I just did half that leaf. The indigo really makes a beautiful dark green when you mix it. Okay, we'll just let those dry. Next, I'm going to put a little bit of the pink in the middle of these bracts. You see here, we've got some muted pink. It's kind of a blotched effect. I'm not going to make an even wash on the pink. I'll try to vary it. And actually, the pink is going to be Quinacridone Red, just diluted with a lot of water. See what a nice pretty pink that is if you can get enough water in it. I'm just going to make it blotchy. I did not ink the inner part of this bract. I may come back and put some more in there. Just kind of spread it out irregularly. If you find you have too much pink on it, you can dab it a little bit if you want to. There are some veins that we'll go over later. I'm going to turn it so I don't get my hand in this wet paint. I can come in this way. You can leave some areas just absolutely white. Whoops, got some green there. You can see it's not dry. It's okay, that's an easy fix. Coming in again just to make some areas darker. Okay, while those sections are drying, I guess I have one more here. Let's do this one. See, this is really easy. And if you don't like the way the modeling looks, later you can smooth some out, lift some, no problem. I'm going to jump over to these middle little areas in the middle of the bloom. This is actually the true flowers here. They're called the cyathea, and each one of these are the actual true flowers of the poinsettia, where these you can watch as your crop progresses, or if you've ever had one out in the yard, you can see that as the nights get longer, these begin to turn red little by little over weeks' time. And so these are actually leaves that are turning red. Those are the bracts. They're modified leaves, and these are the true flowers in the middle. I'm going to wait till that dries to fix it. I'm going to take some lemon yellow and just put some dots in here with yellow. And actually, what I did with these bracts, the two reds, the three reds or so that I have, I wanted it to be not too orangey red and not too pinkish red. So I made a combination of the Quinacridone red and the Red Hot Momma to come up with this sort of a really nice bright but not too orangey red on the poinsettias. So that's what I'm going to go with, is a mix. You can see here on the plate how orangey this Red Hot Momma is and how pinkish this one is. I just used a combination of both of those. The next thing we're going to work on is to start adding the red on these bracts. Okay, we're ready to do some of the red. Got a nice mixture of Quinacridone red and Red Hot Momma. I've tested it over here, looks pretty good. I'm going to have to turn this just a little bit. Let's work on this one first. This is probably the most difficult part of the whole painting. What I want to do is sort of fade the red in with this pink, and we'll see how it goes. I start with the outer edge. I'm not wetting the paper either. I'm going to do a section at a time. What I will try to do here before it dries too much is to soften those edges a little bit. Let's do that right now before it gets too dry. I've gone and rinsed my brush out. It's a lot of rinsing, and I get the excess moisture, but not all of it out. And I'll run along that edge there. Try to soften it. So it has to be somewhat wet, but not dripping wet. Just try to blend that in, and I'm going to sort of emphasize the veins. And they start to fade after a while when you're painting, but you can still see them a little bit. This is starting to dry, so I've sort of faded that out. And possibly you may have to go over this part again. You just want to soften the edges. You can even make a little mark for yourself where the veins are to remind you, because they're starting to fade. It's hard to see them. Come along, try to blend that in with the pink. Just kind of a nice soft effect. Okay, this one here is almost solid red, so I will leave a little bit of white on the veins. My habit usually is to do half the leaf and then the other half. It's just a habit. Leave myself a mark there to remind me. Just leave a little bit of white. Makes it kind of interesting to look at. Okay. These two little ones here are pretty much bright red. I'll do this one next. You see, I did make the correction right here. I did lift that green that had seeped into this area. I just have to be careful here. It's probably pretty dry right there. Let me leave some marks for the veins. Was a little too wet there. I'll try to get some excess moisture off my brush, and you can always lift it out as well, like this. Just lift some out. You can always do multiple layers on these as well if you want to. Just let them dry in between. Need my angular shader. I'm very comfortable with the angular shaders when I have to come into these little sharp points here. This one is a little bit difficult to get into those points. Let's get this smoothed out real quick before it dries too much. Turn that just a little. Making a few marks so I know where the veins are. That looks pretty good. The only difference between all these leaves, they're slightly different in how much pink they have, how much of an area they have of variegation. They're not all exactly the same, but the method of doing it is pretty much the same. I need to turn that a little bit. Let's go this way. All right, let's finish this one up. I think the green leaves are dry enough. I'm going to try to lift some veins while I'm waiting for this to dry, and then I'll show you very quickly the background. You can also do a little bit of detail work right here in the middle. Put a little bit of light green on there for the next layer. You need a really tiny brush for that. Just a nice light green. And later, you can pay more attention to these little stems coming in. They'll be all red or pink. And you can finish off any part that's left white, you can go ahead and fill in with a little bit of a darker pink. Just check with the reference painting. You'll see what I did on that. Just put a little light green there. Let's see about lifting some of these veins. I'm going to set my reference painting right here just to give me a little bit of a guide, because obviously we cannot see these veins anymore, the pencil lines. You could use some white gouache if you want. It seems like a lot of people these days are using white gouache quite a bit. You don't need a lot of this, just a little bit to indicate. That's good enough there. On this one, the vein was right here, half of the leaf, so I'm just going to put a few in there. If you always are in doubt, you can use these points on the leaves as a guide. There's most likely a vein coming right through here because it's going to extend out to that point. That's good. Just a few. I think these are dry enough now. I think I'll put the red veins in next. You'll have to get a nice liner brush or a nice small round. This one was the first one we did, so let's do that one. And if you don't like them so bright, you can always dab them a little bit. I like it like that. But maybe up at the top, you want it to kind of fade. You can soften those top ones, but that looks pretty good. And right down the middle. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and dab. They may not be quite dry, but all you have to do for the middle is just put a few dots of red on the yellow in the middle of the circles. And I would also darken up a few spots here. Just vary the color a little bit in between these little stems. Just kind of darken it up. Just follow along the reference photo. Now I'm going to put a little bit of a pink, light pink background on. And I'll just actually use some Quinacridone red. Just dilute it a little bit. And then we do need to do some shadowing as well, but I need to let that dry a little bit in there. Just going to use a big brush. I'm not even going to wet the background. If it's watery enough, it should be okay. I'm just going to do a little bit of section here. Just go ahead and get this diluted down, nice and watery. It's really kind of dark. Let's lighten it up some. Just add water to it. It will dry lighter. You see how much water I have on there. And this Quinacridone red is really a pretty pink color. So you don't need all these colors. You can just have red, blue, and yellow. I was going to get my chart out just to show you. You don't need all these different paint colors. You can mix your own colors. So you don't need a nice pink. You can just use this by diluting it down with water. Makes a real pretty pink. Unless you want an opaque pink. I have a shell pink that's real pretty, and it's an opaque color. In that case, you wanted to make an opaque color with any of these, you can just add white gouache to it. Wow, that's pretty. Let that dry just a few minutes. If you notice, I had put spatter on it, and I might do the spatter, even though this is still wet. It may expand out, a little bit different effect than my original painting, but that's okay. See, I did a very, very light one on this one. Now the shadowing was interesting because I used the indigo again, mixed with a little bit of quinacridone. It makes a real nice maroon color as well. Let's just put a few of those in and we'll be done, except I'll try to do a little spatter. Try it anyway. It may not be dry enough. We had a real nice shadow here. I should have grabbed my other brush, my pointy brush. That's all right. A little bit of a shadow there. That'll dry a little bit different. I mean, it'll dry lighter, but I think that'll be good. Let's say the light is coming in from this angle, so we could try one here. We could also try one here if it's dry enough. It needs to be a little darker because that leaf is so dark. But you get the idea. I think you can get the idea real well from this one here. I might put a little bit right here. Oh, we could do a little right here maybe. All right, let's do a little bit of spatter and then this one will be completed. Let's just try without making too much of a mess, should be fine. You can do as much or as little spatter as you like. Let's see, gotta get some more loaded on here. If you want bigger spatter, just get a bigger brush. This is just what I had out here right now. It is going all over, but that's okay. Just a little bit, so you get the idea. Let's take a look at what we ended up with. We've got, this is our sample painting. This was the demo. And I also made cards out of this, which was convenient. I, in the past, sometimes have made cards individually for people. I thought this year I would go ahead and have some printed, so I made some cards out of this particular design. Worked out pretty well. And so that's it. I'm glad that I got to share a little bit of my history with the poinsettias. And remember, all the sketches, photos, and everything you will need if you wanted to try this will be on the Facebook page for you to download. That's Paint Your Garden in Watercolor. And that's been fun this time, and hope you have a great holiday season. See you in the next video.